Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to construct polyhedra using Geo-Pro or the Maths Pro Polyhedra Stencil. Let's get started. The model I've chosen is a truncated octahedron, and that requires 6 squares and 8 hexagons. So we just press fairly firmly and draw out the squares that you need. Leave a margin around the squares of about 1 centimetre because we need space to cut the tabs, but we'll do that when we're cutting the shapes out. We've got 4, 5, 6 squares and 8 hexagons. I'll use a different colour for that. Pick my hexagon and again pressing fairly firmly and separating by about 1 centimetre to allow for tabs. Okay. Now what we do is grab a pair of scissors and cut out, but leave about a 5mm margin around the shapes. So the centimetre I left before allows me to cut down the middle there. And I just trim them between it. Doesn't have to be too exact because the tabs will be on the inside of the model, as you'll see shortly. Now again, I'll trim the hexagons with about a 5mm margin around the outside. Now it can be a couple of mil, it's a bit hard, it can be a centimetre, but I find 5 to 7 millimetres works well. Okay, I'll discard the trimmings into the bin, and then I form the tabs. The square you can probably just cut across to 2 sides at once by cutting the corners like that. If you want to, you can cut a different angled tab. Now for the hexagons, you'll probably get about away with 1 cut, or if you want to angle them out a bit, you can like that. Or we just cut straight across. Other shapes you might have to sort of do 2 cuts at each corner. You can usually fold the tabs up with your fingers or a thumb like that, but if it is a bit stiff, the card's a bit thicker, you can use a plastic pen, the end of a plastic pen, make it a light colour. You don't want darkness rubbing off on the cardboard, and you can crease by pressing, with the end of a pen, something like that, to get a sharper edge. You can see now I've got all my shapes with the tabs folded so that the lines will be on the inside of the model. That leaves the outside quite clean. Okay, I'll grab some glue. Perhaps I'll use a bit of scrap card so I don't get glue all over my mat. I'll just put a bit of a ridge in the middle to rest my bit of wood on, a bit of an applicator, I guess you'd call it. For safety reasons, working with kids or classrooms, you're probably best using skewers that have had the sharp end cut off. Apply a dab of glue and just a thin smear of glue, something like that is plenty, and then bring the other shape nearby. You can use your finger to feel that it's flat against the other shape. Squeeze it on the inside a bit, and that's the first side joined. Now for this particular model, there are 2 hexagons and a square at each vertex like that. So I'll put another hexagon on, and I don't have to have a net. I can just follow the same pattern at each vertex for the Platonic and Archimedean polyhedra. So just join that there, press it reasonably firmly together, maybe squeeze the tab on the inside, something like that. So there's a bit of a gap there, but you can sort of press it together. Need to hold it for probably 5 to 10 seconds if you're using the same glue as I'm using, the Aqua here quick set. Okay, now for the sides in here, the tabs in here. Oops, that's come apart a bit, I'll just hold it off. And can hold together firmly. You can see the other one's coming apart there because I haven't held it for long enough. Sometimes you can do two at once. But the idea is probably to do one tab at a time and get into a bit of trouble if you try to do too much at once. I'll just squeeze those together again. So we want that arrangement of sides at each vertex. So I'll keep gluing sides together. It's a good idea often to skip an edge. You don't want to try and do two edges on the one shape at once. You can skip across to here and do another one and do alternate ones and allow them to dry before you try to do the second edge on a particular corner. It'll often become apparent what goes where. You can see that a square is going to fit quite nicely there, for example. Again, you can see it's often a good idea to skip around and do alternate edges, or skip a couple of edges, rather than try and do, say, the two edges here in one go. Too much stress on the corner. Wait for one to dry, so go around and do that first and then come back and do the second edge. You can see we're about halfway through, and it's obviously time to put another hexagon in positions like this. You can see again how I've put shapes around one edge only attached of the various shapes around the outside. I'll come back and do the other edges when that glue's dried a bit. Sometimes a stubborn edge might require a bit of pressure for, up to a minute or so. You can see now I've got a couple of edges of each hexagon glued, but I've got to do a third edge. I'm just holding these two together for a while. That sprang apart when I let go. So as I said before, some edges take a bit longer than others. I'll let go now, stays together. Sometimes you can fit a finger inside the shapes in the interior of the model to sort of hold it together. Next I'll join these edges here and finally put in the square. Here you can see I'm down to the last face to go on. Make sure that these tabs don't overlap each other too much. That can sometimes be a problem, but you can see I've got a bit of a gap there, so that's fine. And I'll need to attach this face here. So just do it, particularly at the end of a model. Don't try to do too much at once. Just do one edge at a time and make sure it's secure before you go to the next one. You have to slow down a bit towards the end. So I'll just hold that on. Put a finger underneath there, pressing the tabs together, and I'll let that dry before I do the next one, because it gets a bit difficult at the end if you're trying to do too many edges at once. Okay, when you get down to the last two edges to be glued, you've got to do those two together, because it's impossible or pretty hard to get at one edge if it's the only one left. So I'll just sort of prise those in there. And you can see I've actually ripped that off there because I haven't left it long enough. So I'll have to go back and do that. Or I might be able to do three at once at the end. Usually I just do the last two together. Okay, try and get that in, and yes, I can hold those three together there. Try not to smudge glue everywhere. And the last one usually goes in pretty well, and the whole shape completes. There's how to make a truncated octahedron with some of the techniques I use with the quick set glue and the scoring and so forth. Hope that helps. Have fun making polyhedra.